Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing us another fantasy football video. This one I'll be going over the waiver wire for Week 11. A lot of good names to talk about here. No significant injuries really to talk about in Week 10, which is obviously great because that means that everybody stayed healthy, but it does sort of limit the high-end upside for some of these options, although I do still think there are a lot of players that are worth highlighting. We're really getting into the thick of it here. We've got 5 weeks left in the fantasy regular season, 4 actually, and then we got fantasy playoffs coming in. So really want to make sure we're doing everything we can to get those wins, wrap up some good, get some more wins here, get ourselves into the playoffs, and get ourselves set up going forward. So should be a lot of fun here, a lot of fun players to talk about. And yeah, let's just get into it. Let's not waste any time. Starting things off with the quarterback position, I think Russell Wilson would be my favorite ad actually of the week. I actually spent this last weekend in Pittsburgh, in Washington, watching that game live, so that was actually a lot of fun. But Russ is playing really well, and he gets the matchup against Baltimore here in Week 11. Baltimore has been the best matchup for pretty much everybody across the board, aside from running backs so far this season. Their offense in Baltimore is fantastic. They're going to put up a lot of points, and Baltimore's pass defense has been really iffy so far this season. So Russ should play really well. Mike Williams got involved last week. The offense is clearly trending up, and I think Russ is going to be in line to be probably a top 10 quarterback next week. Justin Herbert would be my next favorite ad here. You get 3 straight really good matchups here. You get Cincinnati this week, that Baltimore matchup next week, and then Atlanta 3 weeks from now. So really great stretch here for Justin Herbert. He's playing really awesome, and I think Herbert could be a guy that, we've seen him be a really good fantasy option before. I know the weapons aren't necessarily there, but Herbert's playing really well. I think it's a really great setup for him going forward, and he is a guy that I would feel confident starting for the next 3 weeks. Then Bo Nix, just got to bring him up again. Keeps playing really well. Got it done even again last week against Kansas City. Plays Atlanta this week. It's a perfectly fine matchup, and he rushes enough. He's playing really well. I think you can kind of just trust Bo Nix as like a low-end quarterback one every single week, and there is upside if this offense clicks a little bit more and if he gets some rushing bonus there. So I think Bo Nix does need to be on more rosters than he currently is. Next up, moving on to the running back position here, we got another Bronco to talk about. It's going to be Audric Estime, who might have taken the #1 job here. He had 14 carries, only 53 yards, but it is up against a really tough Kansas City Chiefs run defense, and he just completely out-touched the other 2 running backs in this backfield. Both Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin only had 2 carries in this game, so Estime was the clear lead back in this one. Again, not super efficient, but I think going forward, Estime is going to be the running back we want to have there. I don't know if you're really going to feel super confident playing him. Like, you got to be pretty desperate to trust him in your lineup next week. But if you're going to play a Broncos running back going forward, it looks like Estime's the guy. Jalen Warren, got to highlight him. The Steelers are just going to need to air it out quite a bit going forward, especially this next week against Baltimore. We saw Chase Brown catch 9 passes against Baltimore last week. Jalen Warren does fit the bill as that sort of similar player here. So Warren is a guy that we could see get super involved over the next few weeks. And, the Steelers have really tough matchups coming up. They've got 2 against the Baltimore Ravens, 2 against the Bengals. They've got games against the Chiefs, against the Eagles. There are going to be a lot of points needed to be scored by Pittsburgh, and Warren's going to be a big part of that. So I think he does need to be rostered for sure. Tajay Spears came back from injury this week, had 10 carries for 51 yards. Played well. He's just a good player. Pollard's banged up a little bit. I don't know that I really want to play Tajay Spears unless Pollard misses time, but he's involved enough and talented enough that you can play him as like a desperation running back if you need to. And if Pollard were to go down, I do think Spears could put up some big numbers. So Spears needs to be rostered for sure. Cam Akers playing really well, actually, and we did see Aaron Jones leave this game for a little bit. Did come back in and got carted off and came back in the game. So it's great to see that Aaron Jones was still healthy, but Aaron Jones potentially getting hurt wouldn't necessarily shock anybody. He's done it a lot over the course of his career. He's clearly playing a little bit hurt right now. So if Aaron Jones were to go down, Cam Akers would slot into a top 24 position for us. So Akers does need to be rostered for sure. Trey Benson as well, clearly just taking over that backup running back role in Arizona. Kind of sucks here because of the bye, because it sucks to hold handcuffs through the bye, because James Conner's not going to get hurt this week, so Trey Benson's not going to move up in value, but he's still a guy that I think would fit right into the offense as the James Conner back here, and he just looked a lot better lately. I think he does need to be rostered in case of that James Conner injury. Other handcuffs to highlight, I just talked about Tyler Algier, Braylon Allen, but any other just obvious handcuffs that are available, those guys need to be rostered. Those are the kinds of guys that can win you your league if something happens to the guys ahead of them. I think Gus Edwards, got to mention him, got a lot of work this week, played really well actually. He just looked better to me than he did earlier on in the season. I think that if there is a situation where J.K. Dobbins goes down, or even if not, Gus Edwards is a guy that's going to get enough work that you could potentially use him as a desperation running back that just needs a touchdown. So Edwards should be on rosters just in case he does end up taking that job back. I still think it's Dobbins' job, but just in case, Edwards does need to be rostered. Next up at wide receiver here, we got Ricky Pearsall, who's a first-round talent, and it was really great to see him just come out and play really well this last week against Tampa Bay. Caught a long touchdown. Purdy played really great, which is awesome for this entire offense. You saw pretty much everybody end up being fantasy relevant. Jawan Jennings was good. Pearsall was great. Christian McCaffrey had 6 catches. Kittle got in the end zone. This offense is going to be really good. They play Seattle this week. There's a lot of opportunity there. And Pearsall is a guy that has the talent and has the pedigree to end up being really good this season. And we're seeing it. We're seeing that second half of the season breakout for a rookie here. I think Pearsall's a guy I want to get on my roster now before he ends up. Like, there's a chance Pearsall ends up just being a really, really damn good player because, I mean, they drafted him to be. He's someone that does have that upside, and I really want to get him on my rosters if I can. Adonai Mitchell, another guy that I think is really talented and finally got involved this week. Michael Pittman's hurt. It's possible we see Michael Pittman get shut down at some point here. He's clearly fighting through injury. Doesn't look like himself. Mitchell's a good player. Joe Flacco does elevate the floor of this offense. I think Mitchell's a guy that, just in case we see that sort of second half of the season breakout for a rookie, Adonai Mitchell's the kind of guy that I do want to just sort of stash on the back of my bench in case we see a trend here. Rashad Bateman just keeps getting it done, playing really well. Kind of seems more and more like Deontay Johnson's not going to be a thing in Baltimore. A little too early to call that because it's only been 2 weeks, but he only played 5 snaps, I believe, last week. Just doesn't look happy there. I think Bateman's a guy that we can pretty much play as like a low-end flex play if we need him, and he just looks good this year. Lamar's playing really well. I think you can start Bateman in a pinch if you need to. Jerry Jeudy continues to be hyper-targeted by Jameis Winston. He does need to be rostered for sure. He's a good player. Not a great player, but a good player on a decent enough offense that Jerry Jeudy's a guy you can flex in full PPR. MVS had a monster game this last week, over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Probably not something that I'd expect to repeat here, but like there's an argument to be made that he is the number one wide receiver in the Saints offense. Like they're missing Olave for at least 3 more games. Rashid Shaheed's not coming back. Bub Means didn't do anything. Mason Tipton hasn't done anything. They need warm bodies that can catch the ball. MVS is a field stretcher. We've seen Derek Carr at least have a connection to some deep threats so far this season. So I think MVS does need to be rostered, and he's a guy that you could flex if you needed to. Really boom or bust, obviously. I'm not going to buy into it because we've never seen MVS really put together continued success in the NFL. But he had one great week. There's reason to justify it. We could certainly see it happen going forward. So have to mention him for sure. Mike Williams, probably not going to be someone you're going to be super confident starting every single week, but he could pretty clearly emerge as the number 2 wide receiver in Pittsburgh, and he really does fit right in with Russell Wilson. Like, he is an elite deep threat, and Russ is an elite deep ball thrower. I think you're going to be looking at Mike Williams as the kind of guy that's going to catch 2 or 3 passes a week, so you're really hoping for a big one and a touchdown for him to pay off, but it could happen. It could happen this week against Baltimore. He's a low-end flex play, really desperate, high-end, like high upside, super low floor kind of guy. Not a guy that I think needs to be rostered in like 10-team leagues, but in 12 and deeper leagues, he's a guy that I'd be happy to roster, and you could play in a really desperate situation if you needed to. And then John Mechie, similar thing, deep leagues only here, but he played well this last week. He's at worst a wide receiver 3 in Houston, and we did see, especially last season, when Stroud was playing well, there was plenty of opportunity for multiple wide receivers to be good in this offense. Mechie was drafted relatively highly. Obviously, had to deal with a lot of things off the field, just with his health and all that, so if he can finally sort of just be at full health and be the player that he was drafted to be, there's a lot of upside there with Mechie, the talent. So just want to highlight him as a guy that, I don't want to completely ignore because it was a good game for him, and I do think he's a good player. So there's opportunity there if he can really step up. Next up with the tight ends position here, just 3 guys I'll highlight. Mike Gesicki, bad luck last week. We saw Tanner Hudson come in and get it done, but Gesicki's still a clear pass catching tight end in this offense. They play the Los Angeles Chargers this next week. I would expect to see T. Higgins back in the lineup, so it does make me less excited about Gesicki, but we've seen those boom weeks. Joe Burrow's playing out of his mind. You can play Gesicki as a low-end tight end 1 if you need to. Dawson Knox. Dalton Kincaid's banged up here. Came out of the game, tried to come back in with a brace on, was unable to do it. So if he does miss time, we've seen Dawson Knox be really good for fantasy before. You could certainly pick up and stream Dawson Knox if you needed to. And then Will Dissly. He's been really involved lately. He's a guy that I think Justin Herbert trusts as like an underneath target. Not a special talent by any means, at least in terms of pass catching, but he's really getting it done here. The schedule also softens up for the Chargers. They're going to need to air it out. Talked about it with Justin Herbert. I think this is going to be an offense that's going to need to score a lot going forward, and Dissly's a guy that's been involved enough. You could certainly do a lot worse than him, and he's just a fun player to have in your team too. So I do like Will Dissly as a guy that you could actually stream for probably the next 3 weeks if you needed to. And last, but certainly not least here, we've got the defenses. In no particular order, we've got the Dolphins who get to play the Raiders this week. That's a great matchup. The Saints get to play the Browns, and the Browns get to play the Saints. Either one of those, I think, are solid options. Probably the best option this week, or at least the second best option, is the Vikings. They get to play the Titans. Vikings are an elite defense. That getting to go against Will Levis should be a really great setup there. So Vikings are definitely a priority ad if they're available. Probably not available because they got to play the Jaguars last week. No one was really dropping them. The Packers get to play the Bears. The Bears look like they're somebody we can target right now with how bad they are on offense. So I'd be more than happy to play the Packers defense this week. The Lions play the Jaguars this week. The Lions defense is playing really well. The Jaguars offense is not. It's a great setup. And the Texans get to play the Cowboys. Texans created 5 turnovers last week. The Cowboys looked like they were completely inept on offense, so could be a really good setup for the Texans defense as well. They'd probably be my favorite ad, but other than that, it's probably Texans, Vikings, Lions, Packers, Dolphins, Browns, Saints in that order if I had to go there. So all good options there. Just whatever's available on waivers. I know most of these probably aren't, but some of them will be in all your leagues. So try to get one of these defenses and just stream them out this week. So yeah. So that'll do it for the waiver wire this week. Up next, I'll go over trade targets. I'll talk about a little bit more in depth this week. Obviously, we've got a lot of trade deadlines either this week or next week in a lot of leagues. So I'm going to try and go a little bit more in depth, talk about players across each position, talk about playoff schedules, talk about guys that I really do want to be targeting, give you guys a lot of players to talk about, and just do a little bit of a more like trade strategy video, just a longer in-depth trade video for you guys. Some of you guys have been asking for that in the comments. I want to give you guys as much to work with going into your trade deadlines as possible. So stay tuned for that one. After that, you guys will also get starts and sits. I'll go over every single matchup, get you guys all set with your lineups, and then Sunday morning, I do live streams as well. That way I can help get you guys your questions answered, get those lineups set, get you guys ready to get your wins in week 11. So yeah, should be a lot of fun. If you guys aren't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel that we don't miss any of the future content. Other than that, if you've made it this far in the video, give it a thumbs up. It helps me out. And then, of course, if you have any specific questions with ads and drops or any of that, let me know in the comments below. I love helping you guys out there and doing what we can to get you guys all rocked and loaded here. So yeah, appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you with the next one. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.